With the release of the 5000 series from Corsair, we thought it'd be a good idea to see exactly what it can do by installing a pretty extreme system inside, of course, with custom loop. Let's do this. The iCUE H150i Elite CORSAIR from Corsair. Let's take a look. These LEDs, they're so bright. These CORSAIR LEDs, really are gonna outshine the competition. I should click the link in the description to find out more. So the system we have, it does look like we have a lot of stuff here, and we do, and for very good reason, because we're not just building any old computer. We're going pretty extreme when it comes to the graphics card, the CPU, and everything else, including custom loop. Now, some of this stuff I am going to use, some of it I'm not going to use, but we wanted to get a general idea as we're building it as to kind of what's going on. So you will see a lot of this stuff is Corsair branded because Corsair sponsored this video. So we've got Corsair memory, we've got Corsair rads, we've got even riser cables. Now I know eagle-eyed viewers are going to say, but Andy, this is a Gen 4 GPU and you're using a Gen 3 riser cable. Well, that's because a Gen 4 one doesn't exist as far as I know right now from Corsair, and it's backwards compatible. So there's that. We also need a toolkit, handy dandy eTeknix one. store.eteknix.com, you all know the drill by now. And we are using some pretty cool tubing, which I'll talk through as we kind of get to it, because it's satin black and looks absolutely amazing. So case-wise, and kind of the whole point of this video is all about the 5000X. Now Corsair have actually released today the 5000X iCUE RGB, as well as the 5000D and the 5000D Airflow. So we wanted to take this case and sort of see what we could fit inside in terms of radiator support and how we can make a custom loop look inside of it. So motherboard wise, anyone who knows me and watches any of my builds will know that I like to build as much up as I physically can outside of the system. It just honestly makes life a lot easier. And to start with, we're going with one of the newest boards from ASUS. This is the ROG CROSSHAIR 8 Dark Hero. Processor wise, of course, we're going with the Ryzen 9 5900X, and storage wise, 2 terabytes from Seagate with a FireCuda 520. So we're going to be getting blistering fast speeds as well. So on this particular board, we're going to put the drive into the top slot, and everything is held in place by the heat shield with the Dark Hero branding. So for the CPU block, we've gone with the XC7 RGB. This is a CPU block, so again, it comes in multiple colors. We decided to go for the black one to stick with the general theme. And you will notice that it comes with the Intel bracket pre-installed. Now with this block, we have used it before, but normally with Corsair, and I really like the fact that they do this, it will come with pre-applied paste on there. So memory wise, again, going with the black and white theme, we've gone with the Corsair Vengeance RGB PRO in white. So this is actually a 32 gigabyte kit, 3200 megahertz, which we know based on the processor, based on the platform, AMD doesn't really struggle too much with high capacity memory, as well as, you know, on the faster side. So 4 sticks of memory, 4 DIMM slots, and in we go. So it's just a matter really of taking every panel off. And this is the case we're using, the 5000X RGB. Now, one kind of, I guess, advantageous part of this case compared to the 4000 series is the fact that it has a door on it. Now, you will also notice on the 4000X, there is a PWM repeater. It's not a controller, it's a PWM repeater, as well as a node core. So I want to take this panel off so that we have everything we need for putting our radiator in. Now, first thing I'm noticing about motherboard and the tray is the fact that it's got one of these standoffs, which makes life really easy when you're trying to put your motherboard in vertically, because you can do that and it doesnnt fall over. So we're using 2 360mm rads. We're actually using slim rads. These are the XR5 360s, which are 30mm thick. Now this case can actually take 54mm thick rads as well, but in a weird combination. And again, we have a video for it, so definitely go and check that out. Now the radiators do, again, come with all the screws that you need. So we're gonna be using the little ones. We're gonna be using the little ones just so we can get that all into place. Now, I have actually noticed trying to put this in that we're not really giving ourselves much room to get to the CPU EPS connectors. So instead of putting the rad in now, I'm actually going to look to put some power supply cables in. And because we're using a Corsair RM850X, we do actually have some cables which are going to fit in really nicely with our build. So these cables actually come with combs. They're a little bit fiddly to get on, but once they're on, it's pretty easy in the grand scheme of things. So we can then hold that like that. And as we bring it up, we can pull on it a little bit tighter and look to screw that into place. So for the next rad, we're going to turn it upside down. We're going to get the bracket, and I know just based on where the screw marks are, because I've built this before, exactly where everything needs to line up. So now that I've got my fans and my rad all installed on the bracket, you will actually notice on this case, it doesn't look like it's going to fit here. It looks like there's enough room for fans, but not for a fan and rad combo. And that's because of this little sort of shroud or extended part of the power supply shroud. But luckily, Corsair have thought about this one. And you can simply unscrew it with 2 thumb screws and take it out. And again, that just goes into place. A few little clips, a thumb screw, ta-da. And then we can actually look to secure this back into place. So front fans, as I mentioned, we took out the SP Elites just because, well, they wouldn't have matched the rest of the system, which isn't what we want. So instead, we're gonna change them for the MLs. So again, 3 fans. These are all gonna sit in the front. So fans are in, rads with fans are in. Done. GPU is next, and we've got the newest GPU block from Corsair, which is for the 3080 STRIX. So this GPU actually comes in 2 parts. And it's quite a sad moment when you take apart a STRIX cooler because they look pretty good. We do need to change our Phillips head over to something smaller and take off literally every part of the GPU. So with the paste actually cleaned off of it, I'm going to put that to one side and open up the box for the water block. Now, one thing I like about Corsair, again, very much like their CPU block, is they're trying to aim things at, I guess, the conventional average user who first wants to do this. And I did mention earlier on, this is a very tall block. I don't know why, but all the 30 series are just a lot taller. Now, if I hadn't actually used this before, you would notice that underneath here, there would have been some pre-applied thermal paste. And that's what I'm talking about when I say Corsair like to kind of, think about things for the average user and just give you basically a GPU block or a CPU block with all of the relevant thermal paste on here. All the pads are in the right place. You haven't got to cut anything to size, worry about where it goes, follow, dodgy instructions. Everything is nice and simple. So we're going to put some thermal paste on the GPU core, get the block and screw it into place. So the GPU's done, but I did actually take it apart off camera purely because it comes out with 2 cables, which is predominantly for connecting the RGB on, say, the GPU to the RGB on the CPU block. But because of where they are and how I want to do the cable management, it was just completely pointless having that separate cable. And with this motherboard, the Dark Hero, we have actually got an addressable RGB header down the bottom as well as one at the top. So we're going to plug the GPU into the one at the bottom and the CPU into the one at the top. It then occurred to me that we can't do anything more with the GPU until we address the elephant in the room, cables. We can then look at, I don't know, probably keeping all of our fan stuff to one side, because even though we do have a PWM repeater and we do have this, we are going to need to plug, because we have 9 fans and this only accepts 6 and this only accepts 6, we're going to have to look at using one of the RGB hubs from one of the fan kits, and then either using another PWM repeater of some kind or a Y splitter cable, or just plug in the individual fans, 3 of them, directly into the motherboard. But first up, I want to do all my front panel headers, which a thing I really like on this case is the fact that the cutouts here for your USB and HD audio and front panel actually are cut out not just on the bottom but on the side. Because if anyone knows where I'm going with this, you'll know that the HD audio, which is here, normally you'd go to plug that in, get it all done, and then as soon as you try and get your power supply in, it actually gets squashed. Having it just off at the side like this makes life a lot easier. So after doing a little bit of cable management, I know it doesn't look like I've done any, but I decided we've got 9 fans in here. Why not take it one step further and put another ML RGB fan in as well? So we're going to have that in the rear as another exhaust, because like I mentioned, if we've gone with 9 fans, why wouldn't we take that one step further? So cable management wise, as I mentioned, we've got now 10 fans in total. So we are going to have to put another RGB hub of some kind. So luckily the packs of 3 mean that we can put this, we're not going to put an SSD or a hard drive on it anyway, so if we just plonk that there, we can connect that in, have 6 of our fans into here, 6 into here, and then we just need to figure out how we're going to get them powered. But for the lighting side of things, we're pretty much good to go. We just need to plug everything in. So as you can see, cable management, terrible. But on the bright side, this side is actually looking pretty on point. So before I even put the graphics card in, I want to potentially get some runs going up here so that I haven't got to maneuver around the graphics card. So fitting wise, we've actually had to come down, across, down, and then this way, and then this one. And this is the tubing I was actually talking about that comes in this great big box. It's basically black satin. It does mark fairly easily, but most of the marks you can just sort of rub out. Most of it comes from sticking it in a vise or some kind of device to basically keep it clamped down when you're sawing. It is made out of acrylic, so it's a little bit kind of harder to work with, but you get the general idea. So that's going to go like that, and that is probably going to look like that. So we're going to have a really nice run. And the black and white theme definitely is starting to come together. So let's get the other one in here, which is just a normal straight fit in. And I'm really hoping we don't have any problems with this rear fan that I've put in. If we do, I may have to take it out. When we actually did this off camera, we didn't really add a rear fan. So that was something I decided to add in now that I've started kind of building it. We're nearly done with this side of it, which is obviously the first RAD and the CPU, which is going to be fed from the GPU. First bit in, this is kind of how things are looking. It was extremely close because when we originally did this, we didn't have this fan here. So we did have to actually make up more tubes just to kind of get everything right. We did have to take some screws out of the RAD as well, but you know, movie magic and all that jazz. Either way, that is done. This one is going to be coming from the GPU, so we do need to get the riser cable and everything in as well, which we are using Corsair Premium PCI Express 3.0 riser cable. So if we get that in, we can then focus on what we've got to do down here for this RAD, where the pump's going to go, and how everything connects into the GPU. I want to get the pump into place just so I know kind of what I'm working with here, because I have changed things a little bit since we actually built this off camera. Now pump wise, we had the choice of 2. So the first being the XD3 RGB, which is quite funny because it actually looks quite small here. But when you take it out of the box, it is anything but. Even from the pictures, it looks fairly small. But when you take it out of the box, it looks like it has tape on the box. It's actually a pretty hefty unit. So yeah, lots of inlets. I'm guessing 1 outlet, and our pump built in with probably the worst sleeve cables I've ever seen. I mean, when I say sleeve cables, I mean they're not, which I really hate, because for the most part, manufacturers end up buying the pumps from someone like Liang, who make the pumps, and yeah, they never do anything with them. But I've decided I'm going with the XD5, which is a upright pump res combo. We're not going to use any brackets, we're actually just going to have it kind of sitting there freely. But this is how it's going to look. So it is going to look nice. It's got RGB and everything, so we need to figure out where we're routing all of that as well. And it's going to sit on top of this bracket like that. So to get the runs done now that I need to have done, which I originally was going to do and then didn't, and then now I'm back to doing, I actually need to put the pump into place so I can work out roughly how much tubing I'm going to need, which also means putting this one on, which is going to feed into the pump. We need to get our riser cable in ready for the GPU, which, as I mentioned, we are using Corsair's one. I'm sure they are going to be coming out with a PCI Express 4.0 version at some point. Now, the only problem is, it is a little bit long, but there's not really much we can do about that. To screw it down, inside the case accessories, you do get 2 standoffs, which are going to fit here and also over here. Now, with the handy dandy eTeknix toolkit, available on store.eteknix.com. It does actually come with a standoff tightener, so we can make sure these are screwed down into place, ready for our riser cable. Now that just goes into place here, and we can get the same screws that we use to screw the motherboard in to screw it down into place. And once it's screwed down into place, this can go in like that, and it's ready for our graphics card. So we just need to obviously take off the screws for the vertical GPU mounting, which is nice and easy to do. And like I say, having a vertical GPU, it does make things a little bit easier because we can kind of get away with being a little bit slapdash behind the graphics card because you're not going to see it. So on this one, we are going to go from the GPU over to the CPU. Now this actually took a little bit of work to be able to do, just because of where the terminals are in relation to the CPU, but I think I've figured it out, so we'll hope for the best, right? Should be nice and easy. Famous last words, right? So with the GPU in, things are starting to sort of take shape a little bit, and now we can actually look at getting the GPU into part of our loop. So last one, and this one's quite easy because we can swivel it around to basically be in any direction that we want, so that we can get the tubing in and then just position it back into place once that one's screwed down. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, my hands hurt, my back hurts, but it's looking really, really nice. We decided to do a little bit of a pressure test, but while we're doing that, talk about coolant. So we're actually going for clear coolant. This is Corsair's own, the XL5. They do have colored ones, but I mean, we're not going to see the coolant at the end of the day because the tubing is satin black. So what's the point in that? The only place really that you're going to see the coolant is going to be in the reservoir. And that's going to be lit up anyway. So it doesn't really make sense to go with any colored coolant. I just want to keep it clear, let the lighting do the talking, and just kind of carry on with that industrious look. Fill in time, and here we go. The annoying thing is, and this happened to me with chromed brass when I used it, is you can't technically see what's going on. And a lot of you may be asking as well, but Andy, you haven't put a power supply in, and there's a very good reason. We're actually jump starting the pump with another power supply and the included 24 pin that they give you. So that's why we want to get this all working first, then we can actually boot the PC. So as we turn it on, you'll see the level go down, and we just need to keep it topped up. Because the last thing you want to do is let your pump run dry. Now most people would potentially just turn it off in between, but we're trying to be a little bit slapdash here. And I can see our GPU is filled up. There's a little bit of air in it, but that will pass over time. Either way, things are looking pretty damn good. So everything's filled up. We've shaken it, shook it, whatever you want to call it, to get the air bubbles out. For the most part, when you do a custom loop, you will find that the air bubbles typically go into the GPU block, and namely the radiators as well. So we need to get the power supply in. We've got all of our cables and everything here. We can take off the little 24 pin adapter that we use to power the pump, just to short the power supply, and get it into place. Once we've done that, we can then look to, I guess, finish up with the cable management that I don't even think I'm going to show you guys. And then we can look to go into Windows, get the lighting going how we want, get all the panels back on, because there's just a whole exploded diagram of a case down here. And then it's done. So the build is done. Now I'm going to be honest, we did cut a few corners here in terms of what we did off camera, purely because this video just would have ended up being super long, and we didn't want to make that happen. So we did have to do a few things. I had to shorten down this bit of tubing here because it was catching on the fan. We had monumental amounts of problems with the GPU. Basically, the graphics card is PCI Express Gen 4. The riser cable is PCI Express Gen 3. It did have a few little niggly problems. And I've actually got you know what, it's launch time now, the NDA is gone. I'll put the picture up in this video so you can see how we kind of ghetto did it. We had a graphics card basically strapped here. So we'll put that up on screen. Just so we could get things booted, because obviously when you're using custom loop and you're using hardline tubing, you physically can't take the GPU out. So we had to improvise and go with something completely crazy. But we want to put it back together now because it's done. And you guys will see exactly how it looks. Now, I think it looks amazing. It did have a few niggly issues with, as I mentioned, the GPU. AuraSync as well. I'm sorry, ASUS, if you're watching this, sort your software out. It's absolutely just terrible. AuraSync was okay. It had its bad things, but now it's all part of Armoury Crate, which takes 15 to 20 minutes to install, even on a Gen 4 drive. And it's just, I hate it. So I know some people are going to flame me for it, but I have to be honest when I see something that I don't like. When I see something that I do like, I have to be honest there as well. And this, I do like. Because it has everything I'd want from a case and more. It's a little bit hit and miss when it comes to putting this amount of hardware in. I mean, I've taken it to a completely extreme level. Not everyone is going to be doing this. For the most part, most people are going to be putting a 360mm AIO in the front, or a 360mm at the top, or potentially if they're going to custom loop, they're more than likely going to fit one 360mm rad. We decided to take it one step further and go with 2 rads, GPU block, CPU block, probably some of the, I don't know, most beautiful tubing runs I've ever seen. I was a little bit apprehensive about how it was going to turn out, but it's come out great. And setting everything to white as well. Yeah, the 5000X. And definitely go and check out our other video where we look at this, the 5000D and the 5000D Airflow, to see what it's all about. Like I mentioned, I've got a 4000X myself as my personal gaming rig. This just takes it one step further. A little bit taller, a little bit deeper, a little bit wider, but you can fit so much in it and it's got so much versatility. So yeah, thank you Corsair for sponsoring this. It's definitely opened up my eyes about this case, and it's been a pleasure to work with, albeit it had a few little issues here and there. But look at how it turned out. So I'm going to leave you with some glam shots. Roll the montage.